Have you ever wondered what cloning gel to use, or whether soft stem or hard stem is better to clone from? Well, in this video, we're going to get into it. Need a great deal on a propagation package? Well, come here to perfectgardens.com and check out our cloning kits. Or if you just need the accessories, come to Grow Essentials, come down to propagation. For all your propagation needs, make sure to use the promo code propagation for an additional discount. So real quick before I begin, I want to answer Brian's question. The reason why you want to take cuttings off of plants you don't know the sex of just yet is because you only have roughly about 4 to 6 weeks, depending upon where you are in the United States, to take clippings that aren't in flowering or have started the flowering process. So if you take clones, and so many people do this, they take clones from plants that have already started flowering and then they revert it back. Those clones end up getting really weak genetics. They end up being weak plants. They always have bug problems. I've seen this time after time after time after time again. And the plant literally is going through stress for weeks and weeks and reverting back. So sometimes it's easier just to take the clone when the plant's in vegetative growth, let that plant veg out for a couple weeks, and then see what the sex is after the season begins to change, when the time of light begins to reduce. And if it's a male, then get rid of it. If it's female, keep it. Next, the question on demand. I clone and have found just the soft top of the plant is good. The taller clippings, like the ones you said was ideal, will take too long to root. So first off, I just want to say you're absolutely correct. And what you're referencing is really clearly is the soft stem versus the harder stem. And in a few minutes, I'm going to get into cloning gels and talk about this. Although, real quick, the reason why it takes longer is because the older stems are a little bit more calloused up. You know, they're older, they're more mature, the stems are starting to get a little bit hardened off, and that stem has to soften up to allow new roots to come back out when you clone. So yes, it will take longer. When I was talking about the ideal, it was because the lower branches, more often than not, don't produce the nice flowers that the tops will produce. Which goes into Roman's question called lollipopping, and how he personally leaves all the branches on, and at harvest he ends up getting some nice pipe-sized nugs at the bottom, which again, he's just validating what we're talking about right now. When you take those clones from the bottom, what we're doing is we're transferring that energy that the plant would have went through to produce those stems, produce those flowers. And before it goes through all of that investment of energy, we're cleaning that stuff up and taking clones off those. And yes, are they maybe not the ideal clones to take? Obviously, but if you take the plants off the top, then you are going to go through a topping process. And that's not bad, although that will make a much bushier plant than a tall plant. Either way, you're going to get product. Which comes up to Bunga's comment, nah, you leave the leaves and cut all the sucker branches. That is also correct as well, because those sucker branches aren't really those ideal clones. And if you leave those sucker branches on, you now have two growing shoots from the main clone and the sucker coming off. I do also agree with him, right? On the other branches, as you get farther up, you're going to want to take those sucker branches off. And what are those? Those are the center growing tips that begin to produce more stems, which then each of those will go on to produce flowers. Once again, kind of explaining, and this is really clear, just to be clear, that if you only have a couple plants outdoors, if you're growing big time, you're not going to have time to do all this maintenance. You're going to go in there, you're going to be cutting off the tops, it's industrial, getting the highest value off the crop, the rest is going to be going to extraction. They're going to have so much biomass, they'll be selling everything out in bulk to wholesale buyers. A lot of this stuff isn't even going to be trimmed. Although going back to the other growers that are only growing a few plants, I was explaining a method how you can pop your seeds. Don't stress too much whether they're male or female. Get a few clones from the bottom stems that are coming out, because more often than not, they don't really produce. And the leaves that come up with that stuff normally end up being the first spot for bugs or mold or other things to take hold of because those are the weaker branches. And I was doing that because I live in Colorado and my growing season cuts off shorter. So I need to take off some of the plant earlier on so that the tops produce quicker or get fuller quicker. That's why the membership I offer is so valuable, guys, is because I'm giving you guys references to my own grows. Nowadays, I just do a couple plants and enjoy my own life. I have kids. When I moved to Colorado, I threw up a greenhouse, and in the first year, I had the cops stop by my house like 7 times. It's not fun to grow when you have cops stopping at your house and you have 3 kids. So sometimes the things I reference have to be not taken out of context, and they have to be put into context of my own growing situation and what I'm referencing. So let's go ahead and get into the cloning gels, though, because I think this is where it's going to be really interesting for everyone. Okay, so if you guys have been following my channel, you know I love my Excel spreadsheets. All I did was I pulled up some of the most known cloning gels in the hydroponic industry. We have Clonex, Drops Balance, Dynagrow, MX Clone Gel, Olivia's, Root Tech, and Dip and Grow. And what I did was turn the bottle around and I pulled out what was in it. Clonex actually doesn't have what's in it on the label anymore. I looked all over the internet, but if I remember straight, because I owned a hydroponics store, a 9,000 square foot hydroponics store for almost a decade, if I remember straight, it's vitamin B and butyric acid. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go through one by one, referencing different things, and I'm going to reference back to the sheet of what is in each of these products, and then we're going to talk about it a little bit. Okay, so first one, as you can see, vitamin B1, IBA, NAA is the third one, and so on, so on, so on. Okay, so right here, vitamin B1 for plants. Vitamin B1 is that miracle drug that makes all plants grow bigger, especially after transplanting. Then we scroll down a little bit. The history of this myth is quite interesting and told in detail here. I'll make sure to include the link down below. In 1930, a scientist noticed that B vitamins stimulated root growth in a petri dish in a lab. A few more tests and people started becoming convinced that it was the greatest thing since sliced bread. In 1939, Better Homes and Gardens published a report that showed vitamin B1 resulted in huge rose flowers and giant daffodils, among others. The myth was launched and fed on itself. After all, if Better Homes and Gardens said it's true, it has to be true. By 1942, even the original author of the study admitted that vitamin B1 had no positive effect on plant growth and said it is now certain, however, that additions of B vitamin to intact growing plants have no significant or useful place in horticulture or agriculture practice. But it was too late. So let's go ahead and go back to the Excel spreadsheet, right? What does this initially tell me when I see products that have B vitamin? And once again, we have to double check Clonex, but I'm pretty sure it does have it. What does it tell me? Well, it tells me that these companies that are producing a product specifically for Clonex, right? All you have to do is just Google it and read a couple of viewpoints. They're making products. They're the leaders in the industry, yet they're putting a product in their cloning gels that for over 70 years is a known fact that there is no benefit in cloning and possibly in agriculture at all to help alleviate stress. So instantly, I probably wouldn't buy a product from Clonex or Root Tech just because I would think that they're kind of adding products onto their product line or the brand name through private labeling, or they have someone in their product creation department that's just creating products to make money and for a bottom line. It's really not the benefit of the grower, but the benefit of the corporation. Let's go ahead and go to the second one. Before that, though, I will also, at the end of this, show you clone experiments done with tap water, Clonex, and Drops of Balance. But go ahead and stay tuned to the end. IBA, it's a rooting hormone, and this is a website where you can actually get it in a powder, which is a more stable form than in a liquid, and I'm going to come here on the description. Butyric acid is a plant hormone that is found in diluted form in most commercial rooting products. It is also found naturally in white willow, which is also used to root plants. Also known as IBA, butyric acid is used to clone plants from cuttings and in tissue culture. Commercial rooting powders typically have a dilution of 0.1 to 0.4. This is a 90% pure product, so it can be diluted down to yield a lot of product. IBA is insoluble in water, so it must be dissolved in 75% isopropyl alcohol and added to water. The final solution should range from 10,000 to 50,000 parts per million. Once mixed in solution, IBA should be used within a few days. Okay, so what does this tell me, right? IBA, once mixed in solution, and that's obviously mixed in alcohol and water. And once it's mixed in alcohol and water, it should be used in a few days. So let's go ahead and go up to these product lines real quick, and I'm going to show you what I have discovered. I could be wrong, but I don't think I am. Okay, so you can see Dyna-Gro right here, right? So you have the butyric acid, and then you have the NAA. I can't say that word, but that's the NA is what this is. And then you have other ingredients. So other ingredient most likely is the alcohol or the solvent that is needed for this acid to become more of a water-soluble product so that it actually can work. So guys, if you guys want to use this product, you can buy it really inexpensively on a powder and then mix your own rooting gel. The issue I have with this, though, is right there on this website, they are telling you that you should use this product after mix. And most likely, it begins to probably break down. And I could be wrong on this, but I'm just thinking, and it's probably once in a more soluble form, it probably begins to biodegrade because of temperature fluctuations and whatever else they're putting in. I could be wrong once again. Although when I see that, and I see it in Clonex, and I see it in Dyna-Gro, and I see it in RootTech, I begin to wonder what the shelf life is on each of these products and how long they have been in the hydroponic stores, how long were they in the warehouses before they were sold to the hydroponic stores and then sold to the end consumer. When was this batch made? Was it made the year before to fulfill large orders normally placed in the beginning of the year? And me beginning to formulate these questions in my mind just through some basic research, wondering if the product even should be sold in the form it is being sold in. Obviously, they're using this product because they can buy it super cheap, mark it up like crazy, sell it out, which it's business. You know what I mean? If you're not willing to educate yourself, it's going to cost you something. The next one is the NAA. So let's go and take a look at that real quick. NAA is an organic compound with the formula this. So just to be really clear, when someone says organic, that just means it has carbon-hydrogen bonds in it, okay? It doesn't mean that it's organic. It's a completely different meaning. NAA is a synthetic plant hormone. Synthetic means that it was man-made, it had been altered. It's a plant hormone in the auxin family, and it is an ingredient to many commercial plant rooting horticultural products. It is a rooting agent and is used for the vegetative propagation of plants for stems and leaf cuttings. It is also used for plant tissue culture. The hormone NAA does not occur naturally. It is toxic to plants in high concentration. Right when I got to editing the remainder of this video, Pete from MX Gels contacted me, and he ended up telling me that MX Clone Gel has butyric acid, it has water, xanthium gum, which all that is sugar that was fermented by bacteria. And it is a thickening agent because they want to thicken up their product and sell it as a gel versus as a liquid. And then they say that they put a proprietary antifungal agent in there. As you can tell, 5 of the 7 main cloning products that you can use on the market for cloning right now use the butyric acid. So in this situation, we have Dyna-Gro and Dip-N-Gro. If I had to pick between either this one or Dip-N-Gro, I'd probably pick Dip-N-Gro. The reason why I would pick Dip-N-Gro over this one, I know they both have formulations, is because anyone that has used Dip-N-Gro actually knows that you have to dilute this product with the water before using it. So it tells me that most likely they're using a solvent that has not already been diluted with water. I could be wrong. Once again, Dyna-Gro, they're using a gel, same with Clonex. So it goes back to the same reference as before. How long has the product been on the shelf before it gets sold to the end consumer and before it's used? As you can see though, Clonex and RootTech are the same product. Dyna-Gro and Dip-N-Gro are the same product. The next 2 products is Olivia Cloning Gel. So Olivia Cloning Gel has a monocle nitrogen. I can never say this word. Apologize, guys. It has nitrate, nitrogen, phosphate, and potash. So Okay, so think about it, guys. We have 4 companies that are using hormones. 2 of those 4 companies are using B vitamin that has no apparent value. And then we have Olivia gels that is using basically nitrogen. This one's actually the good nitrogen. The bacteria break it down and it becomes a nitrate. This one isn't totally my favorite, but it's kind of like the second best. And then you have the phosphates and the potash, which I'll bring these up real quick. I thought some interesting stuff came from this. As you see right here, these ions are nitrified and are converted by microorganisms into nitrates. That's why I actually prefer this type of nitrogen if I'm going to use a fertilizer base. Nitrates are a little bit more readily available to the plant because they are more readily available, slightly more toxic to the natural environment. Then you have the phosphate, which is mined from the earth, which this is something I think is a lot more beneficial than using a salt-based fertilizer. The last one is potash, which this was, I thought, very interesting to point out to you guys. So in this article right here, references 2 types of potash. There's the sulfate of potash, and then there's the chloride, in this type of potash. At the end of the day, you have to be a little bit more aware, and sometimes people are selling this type of crap on the market right here when you want to be using sulfate of potash versus the chloride, because this right here shuts down your microbiology. Chloride is what is actually left behind in your water after the chlorine off gases. Either way, it's still a salt that ends up screwing up your microbiology. Still, though, you're going to find different types of potash in the fertilizers throughout this entire industry, and most of these guys have no idea. They just look at the bottom line, and because one's a little more expensive and they don't understand why, and they believe the salesman that comes to them and says, hey, it's the same thing, and you're going to save X, Y, and Z, they end up taking the cheaper product because they're just not as knowledgeable. So let's go and bring back up the Excel spreadsheet, right? Olivia's is not using any hormones. They're just using a little bit of basic fertilizer to clone your plant. And so what does this mean here, right? That means that your plants don't need any special hormones or stress relievers or whatever. This is a very well-known company that's been around for, 2 decades? 3 decades, and they're just giving a little bit of light fertilizer to your plant. Now let's go and look at Drops of Balance. Drops of Balance has 34 to 50 plus ionic sulfate minerals. Let's go ahead and look at about what sulfur and iron and magnesium and potassium and cerium and calcium and sodium and silicon and germanium and zinc and magnesium and so on and so on and so on do for your plants. Okay, because let's just point out real quick. So if Olivia's is just adding a little bit of fertilizer to the stem and they're saying that it's a cloning gel, that means that plants should have no issue cloning in good, clean water that have trace minerals. Trace minerals are fertilizer. We can call them back and forth. They're the same thing. So let's come back over here and talk about what those things do for you. First one, sulfur. I bet a lot of you guys have seen sulfur deficiencies. The light coloring the leaves, don't get it confused for when your plants go into flowering, because this also kind of similarly looks like it gets a little light in the center. Sulfur is as necessary as phosphorus. It is considered an essential mineral. Sulfur in plants help form important enzymes and assist in the formation of plant proteins. So what is that? Plant proteins are the DNA of the plant, the building blocks. Here's another picture showing right here that the macro, the secondary elements, and the micro elements, people are still not really comprehending how important trace minerals are to this whole component of things. Iron, right here. I bet a lot of you guys have seen this. It starts to come up looking like a magnesium deficiency. So you might want to go get magnesium and calcium. But if you don't notice that you don't have the blotching that the calcium creates in the center, you are going to misdiagnose the plant and you're actually having an iron deficiency versus a CalMag deficiency. So right here, what am I saying here, right? Iron is essential for plants. Sulfur is essential for plants. Another one, how to use aluminum sulfate to lower soil pH. Let's go over here back to the Excel spreadsheet. Drops of Balance has all of these minerals. So a few years ago, I did an experiment with Clonex, Drops of Balance, and regular tap water. And the first picture you're seeing right here, obviously you can see is the Clonex. Obviously it's purple. Anyone that knows Clonex knows purple. All I did was cut the plant, dip it in the material, and I put it in a cup of water. As you can see right here, nubs are starting to form on the Clonex. So I'm not saying that Clonex doesn't work. I'm just showing. So this one right here, obviously, is the Clonex, and these two right here are the Drops of Balance. I then want to point up the one that had just in tap water right here. As you can see right here, as you come in close though, this is the one on the tap water. The interesting thing about the tap water though is you get really, really close to some of these roots, there is no fur on the outside, no hyphae developing, or very, very little hyphae starting to develop. Some right here, you're starting to see it. Some of these roots are totally sterile. It's really the only way I could describe it. They're white, there's no fur, no hyphae development on some of the roots. On some of the other roots, they are beginning to develop right here. This third picture right here shows, this one right here is the chlorine. These two are the drops of balance. Again, there are some plants out there that are easier to clone than others. These are tomato plants, but I'm just showing a reference right here. Once again, you zoom in real close to these plants, you can see that some of these have fur, but a lot of them don't. And this is the chlorine. What does chlorine do, right? It voids your water of bioavailability. So what does the hyphae do? The hyphae is the communication. So voiding your soil of bioavailability means basically you just are shutting down the communication. So what's the communication? It's the hyphae. Right here with the drops of balance, you can see it's very clear. It's the drops of balance. It's the stuff on the bottom right here. Whenever there's stuff on the bottom of the water, you know it's going to be drops of balance is in there. It's just sitting in here, and as you can see right here, there's tons of hyphae growing right here. Tons of hyphae. Okay. My point is, once again, guys, is you can clone with just tap water. Although, what plants do you think are going to probably grow a little faster, be a little stronger? Is it going to be the Clonex ones that roots are barely developing? Is it going to be the tap roots that have nice, beautiful, white, sterile roots, but no hyphae and communication being developed? Kind of like a child that's 4 or 5 that still whines to get what it needs versus being able to communicate milk. Like my daughter, she sign languages to me, and she says, more. You know what I mean? It blows my mind. She's been doing that for years now. Or do you think the plants that have the roots getting developed, their hyphae, their communications getting started, which plants do you think are going to do better? Some of these videos are super long, guys. I'm so sorry about that. But guys, this is years of my life of testing things, going through one by one, doing my due diligence before I start dropping my money on shit. And I take pictures and I record shit and I bring it into the future just to make sure I'm not lying to myself and I'm not creating a story, because at the end of the day, we're all susceptible to mental illness and we're all susceptible to our own stories that we create for ourselves, our own grand gestures. And some of the best, most humbling things you could ever do is call yourself out on your own shit. Please give me a thumbs up, like, share, and subscribe. Have a great grow, everyone.